Hello. In this week's Parsha Korach in Israel, which will be next week in Chutz La'aretz, we're told about this horrible incident where Korach was one of the richest men that had lived at those time, or ever for that matter. We're told that he had 300 camels just to carry the keys to his treasures because he had so much wealth. And it's a bit of exaggeration, but it's making a point. He was extremely, extremely wealthy. Unfortunately, got swallowed up by the earth after he sinned. But anyways, he was very, very wealthy. And what he felt he lacked was position, because he felt Moshe had the highest position as leader, and then he appointed Aaron as a spiritual leader for the Kohen Gadol. Now, Moshe did not appoint Aaron. God told Moshe to appoint Aaron. It was a decision of Moshe, it was God's decision. But Korach accused him of nepotism, and he took the rabble rousers, Datan Barabiran, and he took On Ben Pella, who would have a gripe because he was from the tribe of Reuven, who was supposed to have the position of the Levium, but they sinned, and then the Levium got their position, and then he told the Levium that why should Aaron, Moshe's brother, be the Kohen and his progeny for all time? We're all holy, and he played on their desires and their emotion, got them all to rebel. Now, the point that I want to make for today's day and age is so pertinent is that sometimes, and it happens, where people have gripes and they have a tendency to want to understand and believe things in a certain way because of their emotional attachment to some sort of narrative that is not going to play out in their future. And then they get hopeful when there's a dynamic leader like Korach, and they'll just follow suit. But they went against God and they went against Moshe, and then they failed miserably. And people tend to do this. And it's so important, I think, for us not to get attached to what could have been if things were different and try and ignore the reality of now to relive a mistake that we made and a path that we didn't take. There are times that are right for certain things, and if we don't actualize them at that moment, it's gone. You have to accept that and move on and be the best you can in that moment. And all these people he took, they were mourning their past possibilities. And they were really, I think, against their better judgment following Korach because we have just come off of Parshat Shlach, where there was the sin of the spies. And it was so obvious that God rules the show. God said you can go in, you can go in. Don't listen to people. Don't listen to people that have an agenda. When you listen to people that have an agenda, what happens? Because the nation listened to those 12, the 10 of the 12 spies that went in because they had their own personal agenda that led them not to want to go in the land. They ended up crying all night in their tents. And because of that, that generation was going to die in the desert. And they should have been able to learn from that. That you can't pick up the pieces because right after that there was that Mapulim, there was a bunch of them after Moshe already said, you're not going to go in. You're going to die off in the desert. The next generation will go in. And then a whole bunch of people decided, no, we're going to go. No, oh, we can do it now. And they ran up the mountain. And Moshe, before they did that, Moshe said, don't do it. God is not with you. And they went and did it anyway. Why? They were trying to go back in time and ignore their failure and pick up from before they did what was wrong. Sometimes in life when we do something that's wrong, when we fall, when we sin, when we haven't done what we were supposed to, you can't just pick up the pieces from before then. Things have changed. Reality has changed. And we have to live with that and make peace with that and move on from that. And if we don't, we're just setting ourselves up for further failure. Because it wasn't a bad thing. With the 250, they just wanted to be close to God. They wanted to serve God. They wanted to bring on their fire pans up a ketoret to God and hope that He would accept it. But they weren't supposed to. They lost that ability long ago. And it wasn't sanctioned by God. And Moshe had said it wasn't. But they were in denial and they weren't listening to what was the reality at the time. And it's so important for us as people when we fall from the position that we could have been because we didn't do the right thing to take the proper steps and to take the new direction that that leads us into. And that will be success for something else, very possibly, but not necessarily what you lost in the first place. And denial and refusal to come to grips with that is only going to lead us to fall further. So I think the lesson that we have to learn from this is when we fall from where we should have been, um, to accept it and to just um, move on in a new way. Uh, because then we can have success there and it might be something wonderful, just different, wonderful and different. But if we just insist on pursuing something that was a promise of yesteryear, um, we're going to just put failure on top of failure and it will not be a good story. And that's my message for today. You know, when you fall, pick up, move on somewhere else. That's fine. Shabbat shalom.